Holly, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me, you have worked previously in some of the big banks. Have your views changed over time at how big companies can undertake drastic change?
Probably the biggest thing I've noticed since I was in banking a couple of years ago, in the sector itself, and we still do work with a lot of organisations in the financial services and banking sector, is the dramatic shift in community expectations. And I think that's really increased the imperative for all organisations to get really close to their customer, really close to the community. And as a consequence, I think that has really heightened the priority with which these sort of change agendas are being driven through organisations. So I think increasingly, companies looking to hire people who've got change expertise. They're looking at transformation as a core skill set. That probably wasn't the case 5-10 years ago. And it's no mean feat to move a big company. It takes a very clear vision. It takes an incredible level of alignment in your operational plan, and it's often not easy. So it takes that ability to persist and get through. So I think we're seeing more and more that becoming a priority, and we're seeing it more and more becoming something that is part of the skill set that banks are actively hiring for.
And so you don't think that companies have gotten too big to be able to manage the change required with all the disruption kind of going on?
I think what we're seeing is people becoming a little bit more creative with how they're approaching organisational structure. So increasingly now we're seeing organisations that are going, you know what, we're going to create an incubator or an accelerator program. We're going to actively bring in companies that are going to disrupt part of our businesses. We might then subsume them, we might spin them out, whatever it might be. So they're not actually necessarily looking at their whole organisation as one solid business unit and going, we need to try and turn that Titanic by ourselves on our own. I think we're starting to think more creatively about what can assist us to move something that's so large. Where are the different access points? Where do we need to be responding and setting up a structure that's perhaps more nimble or close to the customer, as opposed to areas of our organisation, process, etc., which might take us 12, 24 months, 36 months to shift. So I think it's becoming a bit more nuanced in the way we're approaching it. I think that's helping to increase the success rates that we're getting with some of the internal change.
And what do you think is going to be the most kind of disruptive technology in, say, the next 5 years that necessitates drastic change?
Oof, I'd say at this point I'd probably put it as a draw between blockchain and AI. I think it depending on which way you're looking at it. I think the disruptive ledger technology, the way that we're seeing that starting to be applied is quite extraordinary. And from an AI standpoint, we are just scratching the surface with some of the advancements we're seeing at the moment. And I think probably that one you look at, and in a day-to-day public and a general economic sense, that will have extraordinary ramifications for the world of work in particular. You're going to see extraordinary transformation in the nature of employment, a lot of jobs becoming automated. So that'll probably be the one that the public will be interfacing more with directly, whereas I think a lot of decision makers, regulators, businesses will probably be thinking quite strategically about what blockchain is going to mean, either as a disruptive force or as a new platform on which to build aspects of their business.
As a young female leader, what are your views? Are you positive about the rate of change in terms of diversity in both corporate and the sporting worlds?
I'm positive, but I'd like to light a fire under it a little bit as well, I think. So definitely I'm always optimistic about the state of play. I think you have to be, because it's what allows you to get out of bed in the morning and keep going. But that being said, I'm a big believer in being constructively discontent. So it's great that we've achieved a level of progress that when I was growing up I wouldn't have thought imaginable. I think when I was graduating high school a decade ago, there was 8% of women on boards in Australia. We're now at over 22%. So I look at that and go, as much as it's not 50 yet or getting close to equity in that regard, that's significant progress in that period of time. What I hope is to, alongside the generation and the scholars that are coming through, the Westpac program is to play a role in shifting that dial so that future generations can sit here and talk about an even more diverse and inclusive country, not just when it comes to gender, when it comes to engagement of all ages, people of all sorts of backgrounds, people with disability, all different sexual orientations, you name it. I think we've got to be able to broaden our conversation and our efforts, because I think, unfortunately, we probably expected diversity to be the stage gate we'd get through and then we'd broaden the conversation out. It hasn't happened as quickly as we might like, and I don't think we can afford to wait to get that progress till we start broadening out our focus and going, actually, diversity inclusion we know drives a bottom line dividend, and we need to be thinking about it in a broader context.
Very inspiring.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.